Oh, hello. Welcome back to Divorce Happens, the podcast where we support you before, during, and after divorce with education, inspiration, and a little bit of laughter. Because as you know, divorce happens and then you start fresh. And we're here today with our friend Melissa. Melissa, who are you? What do you do? Where are you from? All the things.
Hi, I'm Melissa Rogers. I currently live in El Paso, Texas, but I've been all over the US. I lived in the Midwest, in Chicago and Minneapolis, even Wisconsin. I lived in New York City, Savannah, Georgia. So I've
Wow.
been everywhere, which is exciting. And I am a professional matchmaker and dating coach. And
We love
so
that.
it's actually a fun job that I am even better at now that I've been divorced. So it's kind of a fun place to be now that I have all this new knowledge.
I love that. I love that. So, one of the things I love, Melissa, is talking to people who have been through the process to talk about what they learned from the process. So, as
Mhm.
somebody that's been divorced, what are three things that you learned from getting divorced?
I thought about this and they're really simple, but they're also like really powerful. The first thing that I had to learn was I am not okay being complicit, right? I think that in a lot of marriages, there are, it ends before it ever ends. And so this is something I kind of talk to about my
Mm,
clients where I'm like, okay, you've been divorced 3 years, but like, how long have you essentially been out of the relationship? Because
right.
sometimes they're like, oh, wow, we, basically started, the divorce process 6 years ago or something like
Right.
that.
Right.
And so I think I would love people to remember that, like, there's no award for being the most complicit person to ever be married. There's no award for shouldering so much sadness, thinking, like, I signed up for this. Like, this is now my path,
Yep.
I think that once I realized that I get a choice in where my future is headed, and that, like, if it doesn't set you on fire, like, dang, like, you need to be thinking about something bigger and more exciting. If
Yeah.
your partner isn't the person that you want to call first when something amazing happens or when something bad happens, like, damn, that's not the right partner.
I love that.
Another thing that I learned is, like, I think a lot of people who probably listen to this podcast because I think a lot of successful women love listening to podcasts, whatnot. It helps inspire them. So we are famously type A control freaks. And so the other thing I learned is I have to only, or I can only control my controllables,
Mm,
especially sharing children with my ex-husband. Um, there was so much control that I still wanted to have, right? Like, I wanted to control, like, why are they wearing that this day? Why are they, doing this? Why would you put those shoes on them? And so I really had to step back and realize that co-parenting was going to be so different and that I didn't get to have the say all the time. And so it was really kind of breaking up with the version of me that thought I knew the best, right? Because
mm,
it's it's so funny how, like, we look at the way we parent our kids and we're the only parents that could possibly be their parents, but people have been doing this, since the dawn of
mm-hmm.
time.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, wow, other people really do have the capacity to parent, especially, when my ex-husband met somebody new and now he's remarried. I had to realize I can't control how she's going to be a stepmom. And so
Mm-hmm.
it was really, that was a testament to, like, patience and, being honest with myself. And
Yeah.
yeah, so that was a big one.
Important. Yeah, I love that. Okay, what's the last thing that you learned? Well,
The
one of the
last
things.
one, yeah, the last thing that I really had to come to terms with is, like, divorce isn't failure. Divorcees and divorced people are not damaged goods. I think especially in my line of work, when I was, fresh and married to the first person I had ever married, like, the fresh marriage, and people would say, like, "Oh, I'm not open to dating somebody divorced," and I'd be like, "I totally get that." Now,
Mhm.
when people say that they're not open to dating somebody divorced, I'm like, actually, like, you should be choosing someone divorced, because if they went through all that and they still want to find love, like, holy shit, you've reached the jackpot. Like, they've gone through hell well, and they're like, "I'm ready to get hurt again." You know?
I love
So,
that.
yeah,
I
it's
love it.
really that divorce isn't failure, holy bananas, because just because somebody says I do doesn't mean they can and they will, you know?
Mm,
So it's like it takes 2 and you have to realize like, wow, or I had to realize, wow, he said he would love me forever and then he didn't. Like, oh my God, people might not always like know what they're saying or it might
yeah.
be true for a certain amount of time, but it's not true always.
I love that. I love that. So, if somebody's listening to this going through a divorce, which they probably are because it's called Divorce Happens,
Yeah.
what would be some words of encouragement that you could leave them with, Melissa?
Don't set yourself on fire to keep somebody else warm, you know? So it's like if you're thinking, I'm going to stay for the kids, you know what? They're going to like your house better when it's a happy household, even if it's 2 different houses. Or, you know, say your ex's house is maybe a little bit more chaotic than you like. You know, I was talking to a divorced girlfriend and she said, don't ever forget that one amazing home that you can control and that you can make that loving place is better than none, you know?
Mhm.
So don't light
I love
yourself
that.
on fire to keep anybody else warm. And, you know, this isn't your practice life. Like, we're not getting any younger. So don't stay just because you're worried. Like,
Right.
I make a golf terminology. I'm on the back nine of life and I'm loving it. It's so thrilling and it's so much more fun knowing that I'm in control.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing and your authenticity. And I know that your wise words are going to give somebody a lot of hope today. So, thanks
I
for
hope
being here,
so.
Melissa.
Yeah, thanks for having me.